Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I am Chelsea Ohlemiller from Happiness, Hope, and Harsh Realities. And tonight I am so excited to be talking with the author of Dipped in It, which is this beautiful book. And her name is Bethany Harvey. And I am just super excited and to be introduced to her and introducing her to all of you. And I would not have had this opportunity had it not been for my follower, Kim B. I won't say her whole name in case she doesn't want to be known, but Kim emailed me and said, "Hey, I read this book. It was amazing. I think you should talk to this author." And so, of course, I went and purchased the book right away, fell in love with it, emailed Bethany and said, "Would you please come on and talk to me?" And she was extremely nice and willing to talk with all of you and myself this evening. So welcome, Bethany, and hello.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So like I said, it is called Dipped in It. And I just want to, it's so hard to show these, but it's beautiful. It's just this, like, it's one of those books that you want to just set out and let everybody know that you read it. Bethany wrote this book. It's just this beautiful, simple truth about her grief and her self-reflection during her sudden loss of her father. And she just tells all of these stories so authentically, and it has humor and it has sadness and it has joy, and it's just this book that really inspired me in just a quick amount of time. And so the first question I would like everybody to know is, the book is called Dipped in It, and obviously since I read it, I know a little bit about where that title came from, but can you tell everybody why that title?
So it was just an expression that my father used to use sometimes to mean, I actually looked it up after he died because I was thinking, did he make this up, or is this actually an expression that people know? Some people say that you're fully dipped, but dipped in it means that you're just extremely lucky over a period of time. So, when things would happen to me that just seemed like, dumb luck, or, even just playing a board game or something, he would say, "You're dipped in it." And it was just sort of one of those ironic things that hit me after he died. And my brothers and I gave his eulogy at his funeral, actually, and I just talked about how I know that he always knew that he was dipped in it.
Aww.
And I really believe that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you find yourself saying that now to your own daughters or your friends or other people? Are you using that expression?
Yeah. It's just a fun thing to banter around now, but obviously it has so many levels now.
Right.
With me having started the blog with it a couple of years ago and been writing there. But of course, in the book, it sort of had a double meaning because I felt like I was just dipped in something else for a while,
Right.
not in luck. And so just finding my way back to really understanding that I am dipped in it.
Right. Well, and I love it, like the way you describe it in the book, from, the way your dad used to say it and you kind of had to figure out what it was. And it really encompasses not only your entire book, but your, like, the entire life of somebody, who has big adventures and also big grief, because you are dipped in it. Whatever you do, you are dipped in it. And just like those big accomplishments, like you might have that are joyous, when you have grief, you're dipped in it just, the same way, and it in a more, sorrowful journey. But yeah, I loved it. I love reading about the the sentiment behind it, and then having the book title that. I thought it was super important, and also just a way to extend your father's legacy by, having his saying, and I'm sure other people say it, but when you see it and you think of him and it's on tables across the United States, that has to be a good feeling.
Yeah.
So I also want to say, before we continue, that if anybody has any questions at any time, we'll try to look through those at the end of our conversation. So put them in the comments. I will also link all of Bethany's social media pages, how to get this amazing book, and all of her platforms, her website, where you can see more information about her, and everything in the comments section as soon as we're done. So make sure to look there. And if you don't already, like I know Kim does, but everybody else needs to, hop on and get this book. So one of the themes in your book is around grief and gratitude, and how you hold them, not separately, but how you hold them both together and mutually, and they're not exclusive, And so can you tell me a little bit about how you came to that, and how that has, kind of changed your grief journey?
Sure. I actually, a couple of months after my dad died, anyone who's lost someone knows that those first couple of months you're kind of in a bit of a fog, and you also have people all around you who are supporting you and bringing meals and all that kind of thing. And then, not to say anything negative about anybody at all, that's so appreciated, but then it comes kind of to a point where that sort of drops off, and you're kind of thinking, okay, I'm supposed to go back to normal, but I don't really know what that is. And I felt myself just really steeped in all of those really awful emotions that come along with grief. And I think in my head, I thought, well, I must not be a grateful person anymore if I'm feeling all of these awful things. So if I make myself feel grateful, then I won't have to grieve anymore. And it wasn't until later that I really realized that that was my thought process. What it led to was that I just went on Facebook and said, I'm going to write a gratitude journal every day, and go on Facebook and write something about that I'm grateful about. And that lasted a few days. And then I started to realize, like, this wasn't what I needed to write about. I needed to write about how I was really feeling. Yep. And what I found was that when I started to do that, it resonated with so many people.
Absolutely.
Because so many people could relate to what I was feeling, but nobody usually talks about it.
Yep.
So it was like everyone kind of sat back a little bit and was like, wow, she's actually saying these things.
Right.
And it just opened up a community, I think. And I ended up creating a Facebook page, dipped in it, to, connect with these other people that were resonating with what I was writing. And
absolutely,
that's how it all started.
Yeah.
And so I really, through the process of writing, realized that grief and gratitude do coexist, and they have to. And I think it's because we have the gratitude for our lives that we're hit so heavily with the grief.
Right.
But one doesn't negate the other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love you describe it a little bit in the book about how, as you were writing all of this, gratitude, you realized it was really just covering up your grief, and that you were trying to just tuck it away and push it away. Mm-hmm. And so many of us do that, not just through writing, but through work or through relationships or through anything, and we try to just cover up that grief. But, just like you realized a couple of days in, it comes out. Like, there's nothing you can do to hide it. And, you do have to realize that things coexist, and that's just how it has to be. You're going to constantly be grieving and grateful, grieving and, happy, grieving and a million other things, and you talk a little bit in the book about grief's cohorts. And I loved that, like, terminology. I just thought it was, brilliant. It's so simple, but it just, like, the second I read it, I thought, yes, grief's cohorts, it's anger, it's, frustration, it's depression. And so can you tell me, how did that just pour out of you, or how did you come up with, that kind of concept?
I love metaphors. And so to me, I kept thinking about grief and depression and anger and all of these things as being fear, all of those kinds of emotions as being visitors that were coming to me and sort of like outstaying their welcome. Yep. And that I had to sort of make friends with them. And so I think that's kind of where I came to the word cohort. Like, they all come together as a group.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you don't want them there, but they're not going to leave until you deal with them, acknowledge them.
Yep.
And
give them what they need, like a person coming to Thanksgiving dinner, feed them and send them on their way.
But the thing is, like, when you were talking before about the gratitude piece, I just feel like in our culture, we so much encourage people to kind of gloss over things like that, like the whole good vibes only culture.
Yep.
And it's really hard when you're just not there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and grief is so uncomfortable for people. I
Mhm.
mean, even people that are grieving, it's uncomfortable. And so people want to cover it up, and they want to take the pain. Like Glennon Doyle said one time when I heard her speak, and she talked about the hot potato, and, nobody wants to keep the pain, and everybody just, keeps going until it finally has to land somewhere.
Yeah.
And, that's how it is. And so people try to cover it up, and try to tuck it away because it makes them uncomfortable, which really for the grieving individual is detrimental, because then it's like, does anybody see me? Does anybody notice what's happening inside of me and outside of me,
Mhm.
And so I think that's why people are going to just relate so much to your book, because I felt like I was sitting down with like coffee or tea, and just like you were a friend that was just sitting there and you got it. And it wasn't all stories of just this deep grief, but also just stories on perspective or love or parenthood, and I think that's why it's just going to be a real changer in the grief world for people, because
Thank you.
it's just, this simple, raw truth, you know? And so did you, when you were writing, I assume you didn't know that it was going to be a book, or you just,
No.
yeah.
I actually, when I first held the book in my hands, I thought, was I having like an out of body experience or something?
Did
Because
I
I,
write
I
this?
just like, I wrote a book. What? This whole like thick book, I wrote it. It was very weird. I didn't know when I was writing it that I was writing a book, although I will say that many people would, side message me, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. And for me, I was like, just treading water.
Yep.
I was not thinking about that. I really was just going through the process that I needed to go through. And so in a way, I think that's the most beautiful genesis of it is
Absolutely.
I never sat down to write a book telling people how they should grieve, or it's not a how-to book. I'm not a therapist. It's
Right.
just, this is how I was feeling when I was in it.
Right. Yeah. And it's so, so beautiful. And I love how you also, it's very self-reflective, and you don't only, say what you're feeling, but then also you rework through your feelings and your emotions and everything that's going on to say, okay, why am I feeling this, or what's happening, and it just feels like I said, it just feels super comforting, and like you're sitting next to somebody that just gets it, that just, they understand you. And, without talking to you before tonight, like I was like, oh, we're friends. Like he gets it. We have the same little broken pieces, and so I'm just really excited for other people to get to read it. And so I know when we were talking a little bit earlier, I said one of the things, you're not afraid to talk about, those raw moments of grief, and you talk about grief rituals in the book. And one of yours was wearing your father's slippers. And so I was just wondering, did you find yourself having any other grief rituals, or have you had anybody reach out and say, wow, like nobody talks about this?
It's funny when you said, grief rituals, I was thinking, what is she talking about? I don't remember writing about grief rituals, but I understand what you mean about the slippers. I hadn't really even thought about it that way, actually. It was just, they were there, the night, the night of the wake. And then, the funeral was going to be the next morning. I stayed at my mother's house, and, they were just there, and it was like this instinctual thing that I just shoved them into my bag.
Yeah.
And felt a little bit like I was sneaking out of the house with them. Though I say in the book, I did confess to my mother before I walked out of the house, but and then it just was like they were just, next to my bed every morning. It's the first thing I did was stick my feet into them before I started the day. And it was the middle of winter, and I don't know, it just was like this thread of connection.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. A thread of connection. Yeah. I think for me, I wear my mom's ring. It's just this silly ring that she used to wear. And I pretty much wear it every day when, something not big, but like when I'm doing something, I'll probably be fidgeting with it, like while we're talking. Cause if I get nervous or anything, I try to just touch it or wiggle it around and just be like, okay, it's fine. You've got this, like, it's going to be okay. She's here, And so when I read that, I hadn't really, and I mean, I've written a lot on grief over the last couple of years, and I've read insane amounts of things. And so just that simple story about the slippers, that's where I wrote down, oh yeah, grief rituals in the book, because that's what it made me think of. I was like,
Yeah.
Whether it's putting on slippers or, saying a prayer, or, people have different things. And I just thought that was such a beautiful way, like you said, a thread of, connection and continuing that relationship. So have you noticed anything with your children? Do they have their own little ways of remembering your father?
Yeah. It's funny. We talk a lot about my dad. Just, he was the most, and I did write a story about this in the book, but he was just the kindest, most humble person. But he was insufferable when you were playing card games with him or any kind of board game. And he could just get away with it because he was so not that way in life that we actually were just like thrilled that he was so obnoxious. And so, we laugh about that a lot when we're playing games. One of my daughters and I are both very similar in that we're very competitive with that sort of thing. And my younger daughter will sometimes just be like, I'm out, because, the two of us, my older daughter and I, will be just, going at it with board games. And we laugh about that with my dad. But my kids are always wanting to have pictures of my dad around. I'll walk into one of their bedrooms and they'll have a picture of him right next to their bed. And we try and talk about my dad a lot, just in a very free, easy way, not in a sad way. I think that's so important, just to keep telling the stories.
Yep. Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I like you included that also in your book about, how you learned to grieve openly in front of your children, so that it was this natural thing that they could see you working through, so they would know how to work through it themselves. And I think that's a beautiful component that's just delicately braided into the book for those that, have children of their own, because it is something that, we naturally want to hide and shield them, but it's their pain too. And so the best way we can help them grieve is just to show them that it's okay, know?
And they know we're not fooling them at all when we're like crying in the shower or, finding these moments where we think we're alone to, let it out. They're aware of how we're feeling. So I think it just makes them feel uncomfortable.
Right.
I wrote in the book about how one of my daughters, we were going on a family vacation and we had just been to a cookout with my family, and I was tucking her into bed and she said, I'm feeling nervous about going to Florida. I feel nervous about being around a bunch of people who are sad, who are trying to pretend that they're happy.
Yep. And I feel like I don't think you ever mentioned their names. So I don't know which story is about, but I feel like they are the most just brilliant. I mean, some of the things that you even learned from them, just from their perspective and their open hearts and minds, was incredible. Like I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I just want to meet these little girls, because they, it's just those simple little stories you would tell that, some of them weren't even just grief centered, but love or perspective and things like that. And I just thought that was such a great thing that you were able to learn from them as well, and find hope in their, thought process.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some people commenting, so we'll read those in a little bit. But another thing that is great about the book is that, while it is mostly, a memoir centered around grief, you also touch on relationships and adulting and parenthood and all these, the complexities of life, because you mentioned it a couple of times in the book that, there's really nothing, and I might not be saying it exactly how you did, but there's nothing that grief really doesn't touch. It kind of touches everything that is attached to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you talk about relationships and parenting and your marriage. And so was that hard when you're that raw and vulnerable about, intimate relationships? Was that hard for you? Or because you were doing it without the thought of a book, was it easy to just kind of write about those processes and those things?
Mm-hmm. Some of the things about my marriage and my divorce, I didn't write. So when I was writing the book, I had committed to doing this gratitude post every day on Facebook for a year. So when I soon discovered that I wasn't going to be writing about gratitude every day, I still committed to writing every day because I just knew that that was what I needed to do. So I started to just write about whatever, which was, a real gift to me because I was paying attention more and, really noticing what was happening around me and within me, because I knew that I had to have something to write about that day. But the things that are in the book that I wrote about my marriage and my divorce, some of them were in there, but some of them were not. I added those later when it felt more comfortable, but I didn't write about them in the moment, when I was journaling online, essentially, I guess is what you would say I was doing. Yeah. I also didn't, when I wrote a story maybe about, a romantic relationship or something, I didn't include the person's name if I was writing about it online, whereas I did in the book. But yeah, I here's the thing. I feel like I was down at the bottom of a well. So it was like there was nothing that I was going to do that was going to make me feel less comfortable. I mean, I was, or more uncomfortable, I guess I should say. So I just sort of felt like I was just going to put it all out there because what did I really have to lose for being honest?
Right.
I wanted to tell the truth. And, yep. And honestly, the things that I wrote that were the most, that I felt the most uncomfortable with, the most shame about, the most like there was something wrong with me for feeling the way that I did, those were the ones that I put out there, and immediately all of these people were commenting me too, or I'd start getting all these side messages from people who didn't want to comment on the post, but they were like, have you been reading my journal? Have you how are you getting in my head? So I feel like it's those things that make us feel uncomfortable that are actually the most universally relatable.
Yes, absolutely. And did you feel like free? Like, how did you feel after you kind of just put it all out there and you had nothing else to, lose or give? You just, did you feel better or were you terrified?
I think, there are a lot of times where I would be crying as I hit post, or I would be like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe I'm putting this out there. But I always felt kind of either an exhilaration or a relief. It was like one of those two emotions always of just like, here you go. Here's what I'm thinking today. Right. And I feel really proud of the fact that I was able to articulate all these feelings and put them in writing. That's something that I hear from people over and over again, is like, these are the things that I felt, but I never knew how to articulate it. Yeah. And I do, in a way, feel like it was sort of a, not to say that I don't think I'm a talented writer, if I were going to sit down and write something else, but I do feel like it sort of just came through me.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it feels.
Yeah. And sometimes that's how it feels to read it. I would write
things and I just would it would be so easy, kind of like it just would pour out.
Yeah. And that's beautiful, because that's exactly how it feels for the reader. It's so easy to read because it just flows, and you can tell that, you know, it encompasses your whole journey for this section, you know, of your life. And it's so authentic because you don't leave out pieces, and you don't leave out things that, you know, are intricately blended, but may not necessarily be particular with your, you know, the grieving of your father, but it's also the grieving of other things, you know,
Yeah.
life as you add plans and
Mm-hmm.
future plans and future relationships and family structures and all of those things. And so I just think it's so beautiful and courageous to say, hey, here's my story, you know. And just like you, I've shared some pieces of my story that at first I was ashamed about, or, you know, fearful that people would say, oh, that's what happened, or, you know, anything. And it always is a relief afterwards. And
Mm-hmm.
so I love that people also are messaging you on the side and saying, wow, like, thank you. I can't say this publicly, but how do you internalize that? How do you internalize somebody reading your words and saying, you have inspired me? Because I'm saying it, you have inspired me. And I know there are hundreds and hundreds of other people out there. So do you internalize that? How can you even process that?
Yeah, you know, the interesting thing that's been happening to me over the last few years that I've been writing, but especially since the book has come out, and I think people who had never written any or had never read anything that I'd written online who have somehow heard of the book. For example, I had a book signing, my first one, a few weeks ago, and what I found was happening was people wanted to tell me their grief stories, and that is it's such an incredible that somebody feels comfortable and wants to share how they're really feeling, you
Yep.
know. It's very emotional.
Yes.
Very emotional.
Yeah. Because you're also, I think, actually, Rabbi Steve Leader talked about this exact thing. He said, you know, when you put out a book like his that deals with grief, and, you know, a book like yours, and people do start sharing their stories, you're holding your story and your grief, but then you also start holding everybody else's. And
Mm-hmm.
so you really have to find a way to be thankful and grateful and have that gratitude, and also say, I can't carry this.
Mm-hmm.
I can't let it attach to my skin because I'm already soft and fragile,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so, yeah, I think that that's, it's both beautiful and brutal that you're already experiencing that part of, you know, people sharing. But it's such a testament to you and how comfortable you make people feel, and how inspiring you are to them to want to tell you, like, they trust you, you know, and they only
Yeah.
trust you because of your words that you've given them.
Well, I think that what what I hope the gift of that will be is just to give people permission to have those conversations with other people, to actually say how they feel and know that it's okay to talk about things that are uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And so not necessarily that I would be the only one that they would feel comfortable saying it to, but just like maybe that loosens the cap a little bit, and then they can give themselves permission
Yep.
to tell the truth.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I will ask, is there, you know, like you said, this thick book, I'm going to show everybody, it's thick, but it's not that thick. Is there a favorite story that you have that's included in the book?
Oh,
If not, it's okay. I just didn't know if there's
yeah,
one that you're like, I really like this one.
I don't know if I really have a favorite story. I mean, um when I go back and read the stories, I did a Facebook Live when the book came out, and I like couldn't read it without starting to cry. And I, in a way, it feels really weird. Like, oh, I'm so impacted by my own words that I get emotional. It feels very like, I don't know, like weirdly narcissistic or something like that.
Oh no.
But I just feel like it's sort of it just like anytime I read one of the stories, it brings me back to like how I was feeling when I wrote it.
Yep.
But
it is literally your heart in book form. So if you cry, it's okay, because we probably cried too a little bit during it. So
I tend to like the stories that are more lighthearted. Um, but one story that I just go back and read um, is the one about the hawk, and just like my dad being in the ICU, and my brothers and I and my mom all kind of coming to terms with the fact that he wasn't going to wake up. And just because that was such a crazy experience for me. And it was very impactful.
yeah. Aw. And I'm not gonna spill it on that. If you want to know the rest of that story, you better read the book. So, but yeah, like I said before, I just like that story did tug at the heartstrings. And then, you have, like I said, it's humorous, and it's just full of all the million things that grief are in life. And it's just in this beautiful, beautiful book. So I'm so thankful to my follower, Kim, who told me about it, because I think I emailed her and said, oh my gosh, I'm already almost done with this book. It's great. Like, I just felt, like it was one of the great ones. And like I said, being a
Thank you
grief.
so much.
Oh no, it's completely honest, because being in the grief world, I went through tons of books, and that's another reason I started writing, is because there weren't very many that I connected with. There were a couple, and most of those authors I've spoken to on this series, because they've been inspirational to me. But then there were also pieces that just weren't out there. Nobody was talking about jealousy. When I would see a mom with a daughter, I would get jealous, and no one was talking about the fear, and certain things. And so this book, I really just thought it was just a simple, raw, self-reflective, light, for somebody that's grieving. And so I really, really enjoyed it. So
thank you so much.
And I just appreciate you coming on here. And I'm going to quickly check and see if anybody is in the comments. Oh, Kim said she's super excited she got to connect the two of us through telling me about it. Barbara says hello from North Carolina. And let's see. Kim said she wears her mom's silver necklace, and she had a silver heart that she had given her. And she talks to her mom every day as if she's with her, and it helps her a lot. And Kim said, thank you. You've both helped normalize grief. Thank you both so much. So, that's so nice. I'm always just so, humbled and just so thankful. And I'm sure you feel this way, but I feel so honored when people are here and following my page and following my writing. But then it's also this kind of punch in the gut, because it's like, wait a minute. We're connecting because we have this common thread of heartbreak and grief and sorrow. And so it's such a bittersweet thing, because I'm like, yay, I'm so glad you're here. But also, I wish you didn't know this pain, Do you have that feeling with your page and kind of your following?
Yeah, I think I do. But when you were just saying that, Chelsea, I was thinking, like, your mom is so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. It means a lot, because it's not lost on me that everything that I'm doing, my goals. I was a teacher. I left teaching. I ended up going to grad school for creative media, and my life just totally changed after she passed away. And my page would literally not exist if it weren't for my grief journey. And so everything I do is in hopes of extending her legacy and finding passion again for something. And so I appreciate those words so much, because that's my goal. I say that to my husband all the time. I'm like, writing about grief, I don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I'm going to write a story today about grief. It just pours out of me because I missed my mom, or something happened at the grocery store that reminded me of her. It's just me living life and going, oh, I'm going to write about this. Like, this happened.
Yeah.
And so that's my ultimate goal. You know, I'm always like, I hope my mom's proud. So I appreciate that you say that, just like I can say the exact same about your father, because, you know, I can't say it enough that this is going to be big. And even if nobody tells you, like, it's big, you know, and I'm sure you feel like even if it touches one heart, then it's been helpful. But I can tell you, it helped Kim, it helped me. So you already got two. So I'm so inspired by your work and your heart. And like I said before, I feel like we're friends.
I ran into this woman at a party last weekend, and she was just saying to me, I just feel a little uncomfortable now because, I just feel like I know you so intimately, and I feel like I should be telling you lots of things about myself because it just seems very uneven. Like,
you're like, no, let's keep it that way.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that is funny though, because it is a one-sided, it's kind of like you feel, like I said, I feel like I picked up a cup of coffee and had this conversation, although it was one-sided, so it would feel like that, like, whoa, wait a minute. Should I tell you some of my secrets?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, I just want to thank you so, so much for being, supportive of my page and my audience and coming on and telling us about your book. And I'm going to put all of your social media links down and how people can get this book, because like I said, it's going to help so many people feel seen, and like everything that they're feeling is normal and other people feel the same. So
thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and I'm so glad that Kim connected us.
Yes.
And, I'll be sure to follow along with all of your future things as well.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. So, well, and if you keep writing, we'll have you on for your second book.
Okay.
So, well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate everybody that's tuned in. And this video will be available on my page and on my YouTube page for future viewing if you didn't catch it all tonight. So thank you, everybody. And we will talk to you soon. Bye.